Nigel Farage's recent seismic victory in the local elections has got them all panicking, and they don't know what to do. They realise that something has changed, the sand has shifted under their feet, and they're struggling for purchase, and I don't think they're going to find any. So this is an article from The Times being one of the most prestigious and well-read newspapers in the country. It's where the elites go to get their narrative, and well, as you can see here, Nigel Farage has blown apart two-party politics. Here's what's next. And Tim here makes a good point, actually, because Nigel Farage's achievement, for all of Nigel Farage's faults and failures, is quite remarkable. But it really speaks to a broader failure of the political establishment at large. So he says, Nigel Farage has no government departments, no ministers, no budgets, no civil service, no staff of hundreds, and yet he is writing the story of British politics right now. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has all of the powers of the British state and one of the best election machines in the world and does not have a story. If the government doesn't know and can't communicate what it is for and who it is against in a way that emotionally connects with the electorate, then this is the outcome. And the thing is, they do have a story. It's a white man bad. It's literally all the story is.
Heard this story many times.
Yes, and I mean, Keir Starmer he couldn't have been more crystal clear when the Southport massacre happened. It's like, listen, you far right white people, get back in your box. And it was almost word for word what he said. And so the panic you can see is like, well, look, we've been selling the long-standing betrayal of the British electorate and treason to them, and they've finally gotten wise. And so what do we do? They don't have an answer.
Yeah, it seems like Farage often is the focal point for people who dislike that story, the people who want to push back against the narrative we've been being told so many times. But often that energy seems to reach a pinnacle and then Farage mysteriously disappears.
That has happened a couple of times.
So in a way,
it's a habit.
Starmer's best power is his opposition being ineffective, I would argue.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're worried at this point because Farage actually seems to be doing something. He finally seems to have...
Yes, but I've heard this story many times before. Farage has been incredibly effective at doing things.
Yes.
And then also incredibly consistent.
Then he pulls the football up and you woof.
Yeah.
I mean, to add to Luke's point that Labour's main weapon is the ineffectiveness of the opposition, it was a victory that was anti-Tory. In a sense. There wasn't a particularly widespread enthusiasm with Starmer.
No, that's true. So, I mean, in fact, he goes on to point that out. While things are bad for Labour, they're an existential threat to the Tories. And that is true. I mean, Labour is getting an absolute drubbing. And it's proportionally about the same. They both lost about 2/3 of their councillors during this election. So this, for the two main parties, imagine if, in America, the Republicans and Democrats both lost 2/3 of their sort of local politicians to third parties. You'd be like, well, how the hell is this happening? And that's what's happening here. So it's now like there's a great quote actually, So this is the first time the Conservatives have not won a majority in a single council since the local government system was created in 1889. So this is historically bad. I mean, it's bad for Labour, but they're in a stronger position than the Conservatives. And one person that he speaks to in this says the Conservative Party is basically its councillors. They're the ones who organise everything. And essentially, if the next year's local elections are the same as this year's, wiped out in key councils like Staffordshire and Kent, it will cease to be a functioning party. So you might think that the current person in charge of the party, Yoruba Mammy Kimi Badenoch, would be on top of all this. She'd be like, right, I'm the party leader. I have to start making some affirmative action. I have to do something. But instead, quote, insiders say that Badenoch spent much of Friday, quote, doom scrolling on her phone.
Great.
While Robert Jenrick, her potential successor, went out to do a series of live interviews. Aides said she wants to learn lessons, and donors who had sat out the local elections were rallying around, handing over £500,000 to a woman who is doom scrolling on her phone. It's like, sorry, what are we doing here? Like, this is a party that's ripe to die, right? Surely.
It's crazy. The Conservative Party, the most successful party in world
I've
history,
heard,
right?
quote unquote, yeah.
That they've effectively won more elections over a longer period of time.
Yeah.
But if it genuinely does collapse, but all the same people just move to some new replacement, I think we might see a bit of the rose with any other name smells as sweet, that we might see a repeat of the same wet behaviour just reappearing.
And it's kind of crazy that Nigel Farage is prepared to take Tory defectors. Like, why are you taking any defectors? Crush them all and drive them out of politics. You're in a position to do it.
It's pointless to just rename your party by some circuitous route.
But the ribbon's slightly lighter blue.
You're right. That's a good point. Slightly lighter blue will change everything.
Yeah.
I take it back.
So the point being, it's bad for the Labour Party, but it's even worse for the Conservative Party. But the thing is, at least in the Conservative Party, there's a sense that they're like, okay, we have to do something different. I mean, we'll get to that in a minute. In the Labour Party, you've got people like Wes Streeting, which is the current Health Secretary, saying like, no, mistakes weren't made. We didn't make any mistakes. It's like, you lost 2/3 of your councillors, mate. Like, I mean, surely there's something that you've done wrong here. And his general thesis is, well, we just had to make really unpopular decisions to maintain the current traitorous status quo that's destroying the country. It's like, yeah, but that's the problem.
So it's not the fault of Labour. It's the fault of the people who didn't understand the supreme wisdom of Labour.
That's honestly, that is exactly, almost word for word, what he says. The reason we made these choices is because we genuinely believe they're the right choices to get the country out of the massive hole it was left in by the Labour Party policies that were continued on by the Conservatives. And so, yeah, he as far as he's concerned, no, everything's fine. But you can see by the expression on his face, is that a man who really thinks he did nothing wrong? Like, is that a man who thinks, no, I'm confident in the future? Or is that a man who looks like he's got a gun to his head?
It looks like a boy being told off by a head teacher.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Am I going to get expelled for this? And the answer is yes. Wes Streeting is going to get great replaced in the next election because they imported a load of Muslims into his constituency. And so last election, he won by only a few hundred votes to an independent Muslim MP candidate who's going to win next time. So he's out in the next election.
So I do have a question as the lone American on the panel here. Is it a sense that the Tories seem to not have any sort of principles or stance or something like that?
What a wonderful observation.
There is a small sense of that, yes. The Tories don't have any principles, that's correct.
That's how you become the most successful party in the history of the world.
Yeah, I have principles, but if you object, I have others.
Well, the reason I ask that is because I think much in the same way that the third party was able to, I would say temporarily, at least as of right now, have some success, is the same reason why Trump ended up in the position that he ended up in.
Precisely.
It's because Trump is not a Republican in the traditional sense. He hijacked the party shifted towards what Trump is doing for now. We'll see what happens when Trump is no longer around. And so I do see like there's some sort of similarity there where a lot of people had a lot of apathy towards both parties. You know, oh, come to us, we'll fix the problem. They go to them, they don't fix the problem. Oh, come to us, we'll actually fix the problem. And they keep going back and forth. And at some point, they're going to be like, both of you are a joke.
That is exactly what happened. That is exactly word for word what is happening.
Yeah.
Because Labour and the Conservatives are basically, George Galloway famously calls them two cheeks of the same arse.
Right.
And Nigel Farage is just standing there saying, hey, I could do something. And everyone decided, yeah, better him than these two clowns who have just ruined the country repeatedly. Yeah. And as you can see on Wes Streeting's face, he knows it's coming. He knows. He can see the train approaching. And he just can't get out of the way. And it's like, yeah, so we didn't do anything wrong. Whack. Whereas there are other Labour MPs who are like, you know what? We might be terrible. And we might have betrayed the public completely on the one issue that literally since the 60s they were saying we don't want this. And every time since then, they've got this, whether they wanted it or not. And Jonathan Hinder points out that this is an existential threat for the Labour Party as well. Because one thing that when you look at the map and you see, okay, Labour have got there, Conservatives have got there, but Reform are starting to get places and the Lib Dems got these. What it doesn't show you is what's happening under the hood. Because in every Labour constituency now, the Reform Party are the second party, and not by a long margin either, because it turns out, and this was something that the politicians really, for some reason, were surprised to find out, is that the average person in the country is basically far right. They're basically patriotic, they're basically socially conservative.
Always have been. They
always have been, especially in the poorer areas of the country where social conservatism is used to maintain the integrity of the community itself. And they're suddenly finding out that what, you're not woke, so from some guy from Northumbria or something who worked in a mine his whole life. It's like, yeah, no, I'm not woke, actually. You know, I just don't want the government to screw me.
Or maybe they're not far right. and that the Overton window has just shifted.
Well, I'm happy to call them far right because that just means normal in a previous paragraph, which is why they don't have an ideological name for them. It's like, what's the far right ideology? There isn't one. They're just normal.
Right.
It's just you're a radical leftist, so you call them far right.
Right.
But you are right. You know.
Speaking of changes, though, to the Overton window and to the situation, I think that this statement does reveal a change because the left has turned its back to the native working class for decades.
Oh yeah.
That's why there was a Brexit.
That's why
Brexit
all of this happened.
took place. And what happened was that they opted for mass migration, and now a critical mass has been reached, and several, let's say, communities are making their own parties, and they think, well, now we're losing their votes, so we have to go back to the working class.
You know what? That's exactly right. And Jonathan here has a plan. Right? Do you know what the plan is? Keep things exactly as they are. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
Well, no plan is a plan, right?
He has recommended a, quote, 1 in, 1 out system. So rather than having a net of something like 1 million a year coming into Britain, which is what we have, which is crazy, he just wants the number to stay the same, but just 1 in, 1 out. It's like, okay, but the problem is we just have far too many people in this country.
Right.
Far, far too many people. And if you've ever driven on the roads or used the trains or tried to get a hospital appointment or whatever it is, you'll be well aware. Try to buy a house, try to get a job, try to literally queue up for a coffee. You'll know that there are just too many people in this country. And his answer is to keep that number exactly the same. It's like, right, that's not the solution. Like, millions of people who came here recently need to go home. And so he said, look, this would return us to a more or less balanced net migration levels that we had for decades. We had 300,000 a year for decades. It turned London into a minority English city. That turned Luton into a minority English city. It turned Birmingham into and this new spike in immigration is very new, but these problems were already there from their quote unquote balanced migration system. And so anyway, the point being, Labour have no answers because they can't sit there and go, right, we've just done too much and we have to reverse this. For some reason, they're absolutely committed to having as many Somalians in social housing as possible. I don't know why. No one's actually explained it. I mean, what was the answer?
I will say stopping
Am I wrong?
additional migration is better than letting it continue.
I guess it is.
So maybe it's a lesser of two evils argument, but it feels like a progress in a sense.
In a sense, but it doesn't solve any of the problems.
It's very helpful though for big statism and
It
for
is,
anarcho-tyranny and for instance things like pushing digital ID.
Yep, that is true.
Well, also stopping migration causes a big problem for things like pensions because, as we know, it's essentially it's the more people come in at the bottom, the people at the top can continue to get the pension that's been owed to them.
That is the theory, but like Somalians taken as an example, they have a literacy rate of 41% in their own language. Yeah. How many Somalians can actually like come into the offices in Britain and start doing the sort of well-paid jobs that pay for pensions?
Yeah.
Not that many, I would say.
Well, I'm not arguing that migration is of a net benefit to normal people, but it is to elites. And
it is the theory they use.
So for somebody to be proposing that we're stopping migration is a ballsy move from the perspective that surely people in powerful positions do not want even that.
It is something, but the reason that they've got to do this is because the poor people are just like, no, I'm voting far right. Because the media narrative around reform is that they're a far right party. Now, just to be clear, Nigel Farage is not far right. He's centre right at worst. He's basically MAGA. Basically, he's not far right. But the poor people have decided, yep, no, I'm voting overwhelmingly for the far right. As you can see, Labour have lost 50% of a share there, and they're going for reform. This is the Independent Commission on Neighbourhoods. It shows that it's in the deprived neighbourhoods. It's where the people don't have money, but do have immigrants, that they're like, you know what, I am voting reform. I'm tired of this. I don't want this. And finally, some of the elite are starting to notice, hang on a second, I think it might be immigration that is driving people to the right. How is it we didn't see this before? It's so insufferable. But the thing is, even now, they're so, like, what they do is they talk around immigration, right? So he says, the additional support reform is attracting at the moment comes from more swingy voters discontented about living standards, condition of public services, and blunders made by the government. Right, why are living standards going down? Why are the services all failing? It's immigration. It's at the heart of everything, because 1 million people a year into a country of 70 million people is enormous.
Right.
Absolutely enormous and totally untenable. And like I say, various journalists and economists are like, we are actually sleepwalking to a massive reform victory in 2029. And like I said, as much as I don't support Farage on a lot of personal levels, that's something different. And I'm up for it. I'm just up for anything different.
Is there a risk that the people coming into the country who are then able to vote counteract the disenfranchised feelings of the poorer people?
I would say no, because at best they could only vote in the ethnic enclaves. So you'd get a handful of independent MPs who are Muslims. But the country is still 75% English. And in Scotland and Wales are more Scottish and Welsh than England is English. So we still have the overwhelming number of votes. And so we have to crack on and actually fix this sooner rather than later.
It's a boiling the frog problem, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Because if they go too fast, they will get this revolt and they'll lose power.
Yes.
But if they can go slowly enough, they can do the replacement that they intend,
Yes.
and then the battle is won.
Yes, and I mean we do in a way have to thank Boris Johnson for just opening the spigot and just cranking it all up.
Right, yeah, that's true.
In a way we do have to thank.
Secretly based.
Yeah, but they can see the future too. They can read the tea leaves and see that an absolute walloping is coming on the horizon. And what's also good is that this campaigner for Labour was like, well, look, I've heard that Number 10 and Angela Rayner are worried about doing anything that's deemed woke because they're terrified about reform and Trump. And so anything that sounds a bit lefty, they absolutely won't do, which is very interesting and good to hear. Anything that's not betray us. And so you've got another this Jonathan Hinder tweet, and he's, again, just the main issue that's pushing working class people to reform is immigration, because he's replying here to a communist who was in the Labour Party for 50 years or something, John McDonnell. And he just won't talk about it. But even then, even Jonathan Hinder, the one Labour MP I can find, is like, look, it's immigration. He's like, well, we need one in, one out. It's like, no, millions of people who have arrived here to claim our benefits need to go home. They've got countries of their own. Boris let them in for some reason. They need to go home. It's not that difficult.
There's, and it's not just happening in the UK. Sometimes I see this in the United States. It takes human beings and it turns them into numbers. Well, if we have this magical ratio, then everything will be fine.
And it's 100%
like,
what it is.
And I'm just like, that's not how human beings work. There's a cultural element. There's social cohesion. All of these things you can't put a number on, right? There's no magic formula if this works in this town or in this city or anything like that. But very clearly, if you take a town that has 1,000 people of the same ethnic background, of the same cultural understanding, and bring in 2,000 people of the opposite,
what could possibly go wrong?
Like, it's going to make a big issue. But if in the grand scheme of things, you're like, well, if it's in the ratio, everything is fine. Let me just go to my penthouse right here, and I'm absolutely okay. It doesn't affect. What's your problem? What are you actually talking about? And so there's the social disconnect where the people who are able to pull the levers aren't actually affected by the thing that they're controlling. And I'm seeing that essentially that's what you guys are talking about.
Yeah,
the United States is going through much of the same thing.
Is 100% what's happening. And this is why I like the example of Wes Streeting so much, because he is someone who, up until this point, probably thought very similar to that, but then he realized that actually I've imported a demographic of voters who are not going to vote for me into my own constituency. And so this is his last election. Right. He is 100% not going to win it because the numbers are now just against him. And
okay, but is the replacement for Wes Streeting going to lower immigration?
No, they're going to increase it. They're going to be an independent Muslim MP.
Right. So this is what I was
assuming they don't join the Muslim party.
To be a slightly black-pilled voice here. I'm not convinced that we're going to have this true landslide back towards this idea that everyone's going to wake up and realize what's been happening to them. I think a percentage of people are moving to reform, but a larger percentage of people are going to just be led around by the media.
100%, but all it needs is for Nigel Farage to get about 35% of people on board, and then he can form a government. And I think at the moment he's about a quarter of people. And I think as it gets closer to the election, the argument will become stronger on his side.
Okay.
It's just something has to change. Because, what's Keir Starmer going to do to fix anything?
Okay.
I'm optimistic.
We'll
and the thing is, there was a poll the other day where just 65% of people think Farage is the next prime minister.
Wow.
The sort of the tide is shifting, and everyone can feel this. It's going away from the two main parties, and they're just collapsing, and they're panicking, and they don't know what they're.
That'd be crazy.
Doing. It would be great, to be honest. And like I said, I'm not a big fan of Farage, but anything, right? Anything. And in the Labour Party, you get people like this. You're idiots. Oh, you're taking a battering for this. And he's like, yeah, we should really be doubling down on your trans activism. That's what working. And that's a Labour MP. Just no, I'm done with the radical left at this point because we're getting absolutely tanked.
If Farage becomes the next Prime Minister, he will quit on day one.
No, he won't. He'll quit on the third or fourth month when he can't get anything done.
Yeah, maybe.
But anyway, so you've got Liberal Democrats being like, I heard the leader of Reform proclaim confidently that the problem was immigration, that it was bringing people here with cultures not compatible with ours. That sort of language should be unthinkable, says the Liberal. Now, this is the archetype of the person who is nowhere near the problem, right? So the Liberal Democrats in Britain are the party of Middle England. They are the party of homogenous, white, ancient enclaves of people who live in like Devon or like Somerset or whatever, who have never seen a brown person in real life. And so they are, I mean it. And so they're just like, I can't believe we're doing this. Oh, this doesn't play well at the dinner parties. It's like, okay, but in Birmingham, they've got machete gangs running down the streets and you just don't know what you are talking about. Like, this absolutely is a case of incompatible cultures. And it's not even controversial to say it. And then, of course, you've got another Labour MP here who's pointing out, look, Reform. They know that the actual like normal MPs, mostly the straight white male MPs, to be honest, are like, look, the working class core voters of Labour find Reform's messaging on immigration attractive, which is why they're going to Reform in the north rather than to the Conservative Party or the Labour Party. And this is something that is just coming, and they can't stop it, and they have no good answers for it. So good news on that, to be honest.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.